All right, so this is a video pretty much specifically for Kurt Kimberling's class. If you're stumbling upon it, you know, how are you? So you guys are sitting in class, just as I was sitting in class about 9 years ago, and you got some choices to make. But I stumble upon things as I make things, and I kind of stumbled upon sewing as a hobby and something I got to do for business right now. Bought a new machine. It's okay. But then I figured I am the man that has old shit. So we got some old ones. And being in Ohio, gosh, you can pick these up for, honestly, these were $10 a piece. I'm not even gonna lie. And the guy was so gracious. I gave him 40 a piece because he was a pastor of a church. He kind of stumbled upon these and was giving them away practically. So these old machines, these are both 20s era. They're really beautiful, and they can really show you a lot on how things were made without computers, with what they had, drafting, and they would make castings, and they're pretty far along in the 20s and 1910, but these are really beautiful machines if you ever get your hands on one. And just like this is a latch, push that in, and then this one, it looks just like it's in there, but it's on that little, they cut a slit into that to spring it open, and they cut it on a dovetail. It's amazing. So the amount of machining and precision they have in these machines is really amazing. You got to think each one of these shops in the 20s, like a set of Joe blocks was a lot of money. Maybe Western Electric got a set, but they really didn't start getting out there till World War II, especially with Henry Ford. So these shops were pretty much, I bet they had their own standards, and these are some tight fitting machines, and a lot of this stuff had to be hand fit. So this is your standard sewing machine that would be consumer grade. And this one's a gem. But this one, so you got your thread, you hook your thread up through there, and then you've got your little bobbin that goes underneath, and you got your winder, so it winds up there. You got your workings in here, and these are all cast, even the workings on this. So these Franklins, it kind of shows you, they even put a little etch in there for a timing mark on that cam for the feet. So that's your feet, so you won't lose. So if you take it apart, you kind of get a rough idea on where to time it at, which is very nice of them. But these are all very beautifully little cast components where all they had to do was cast it, put it in the fixture, drill the holes, and so it's pretty amazing all the stuff that was made back in the 20s when things were booming. So that's your bobbin holder right here, and you've got, it's not oiled yet, that latch opens up, and then this is your hook. So if you look at these parts and look how they're made, this was turned on a lathe obviously, but you can see the tooling marks, as you would basically turn it on a lathe, but then you can see they've got a dip in there as well as on the other side. So it's really complex turning. I mean, I run a lathe every day, and I don't do shit this complex. I don't. So, the simple stuff pays some bills and it keeps the lights on, but this is really complex stuff. And then this is a casting. So this housing right here is just one nice casting, as well as these are castings. And the gray bar is just a little different. Same design, different makeup. So the gray bar, which is a national rebranded gray bar. Gray bar was a investor. decided to invest in sewing machines and distribute them. So your bobbin holder on this is an entire cartridge. It pops out and it holds an entire spool. So you've got a lot longer run time with this one than running a little bobbin. So a whole spool of thread, right? Versus your bobbin on a standard machine, which is this tiny little thing, and it runs out. So, you know, your spool is going and then you run out and you don't notice until you've tried to sew something and the whole thing falls apart. I've already done it a few times. So, but this is incredible. Since this housing's a pretty big deal to machine, this is where the money's at. So this is a bitch to machine. But they made it bigger, and I'm sure it costs a lot more. And if you look at it, even one of these buckets, so people that have a bad day, they find one of these machines and they're missing this bucket. That's $350 to $600 just for this. And between you and me, I can fix some things and I can make some things. And I bet I could remake this in a way that works. It's pretty simple. There is a lot of stuff going on in here to where the one thing I do not understand is you can see the lathe, the churning marks. I wish it would focus a little better. You can see the churning marks where they bored this thing out. The same feed patterns on this stud. And there's no way I could even do that because that stud is very dainty and it's hollow because it's holding this spring pin. So I think the backside is hiding some braze marks where they braze that pin in. But I don't know, because if you look at the very base of it, you see no brazing. So there's, yeah. If you look at these old parts that'll really make your head scratch, you're like, how the fuck did they make this? And they didn't have computers. They didn't have, you know, they had a good draftsman, good engineer, and good working hands, and that was it. But you can see by the tail of it, it was all churned. This is heavy chromed. But right here, they cut a flat along here, and there's all linear straight lines. And it's pretty precise. So I would imagine that's a shaper mark from a small shaper, unlike, well, I've got a shaper right there, you know, because you got to have a shaper. But I don't think I'd ever do any work that small in my shaper. Mine's more of a horse that just roughs things out. But they had small precision shapers that would, you know, you'd put a part in there and it'd make a little flat. This ass end of it, I'm pretty sure it's a shaper. It's heavy chromed, but you can see the linear lines. So I'm thinking they had this in a fixture and they shaped the ass of it, and they, you know, they probably had to fixture that cock too, so they cock that knife edge in. And all that is for you to orient it and put it in the machine right. As for these little tiny sheet metal dies, that's something I can't recreate. I can't recreate it without the die. I mean, I've got a press over there, but it would cost me so much to even make a die just to make this one little part. It would be absolutely pointless. But it's very beautiful cut, precise die stamped parts. I think that's your thread tension. But I think I can make something like this. And I think I was talking to Kurt, we could, you know, augment some things and make things in the shop out of shim stock. But this right here, I'm sorry, the video is not that great, but that little notch, so these are nice straight linear lines. That little notch is hand ground. They ground that on a bench grinder. It's not that nice. So if you can get your hands on some old equipment, that's my best advice to you, because when people come to ask me to fix things, usually I'll take a good look at it and see how the hell they made it to begin with. And some of the things are within my wheelhouse, and some of the things aren't within my wheelhouse. So that's how I be careful on a job. As I replaced lots of things here and there and brought a lot of old machinery back to life, but you have to have a basic understanding on how it was made to begin with, and follow and chase your tooling marks. You know, what tool makes what mark. You know, some of the crusty boring in this, it's like, yeah, they bored it with a lathe that wasn't too sharp. It wasn't completely in round. It's like this side's a little heavier, and then that's a thinner wall. So I mean, and you think they'd want it to be completely concentric, but it's not a perfect world. So I'm about to run out of video, but this machine is a little more industrial, but instead of having cast arms, everything in here is stamped. This is stamped sheet metal. So it just, you know, and it's the same design, same basic design, but larger spool and stamped. So it's just amazing to kind of learn and see how things are made. And I don't know, that's my little tidbit. Good luck.